I would advise them to really understand the reason why they want to do it, because that reason why you've chosen to go into medicine is what's going to support you through the challenges that are inevitable. The times where you're questioning, why am I doing this to myself? You need to have a thorough, deep-seated personal reason as to why you've committed to this. And there has to be a strong emotional connection to that vision, to that why. And that's up to an individual to decide for themselves. And if it's going to be for money and for status or for whatever, because I want to do what my dad did, I want to fill in my dad's glory, whatever it may be, it's up to that individual to decide whether or not that's going to sustain them through the inevitable challenges of the journey, first and foremost. Secondly, of course, it's awesome. I would advise someone who's interested, I would tell them, yeah, it's awesome. It's challenging. You have to embrace challenge and you have to strive for excellence. So don't settle for anything other than what's excellent and go all in.
Hi, I'm Kyle Stevenson, and you're listening to the Assets and Orthopedics podcast. In this forum, we hope to educate medical students, residents, physicians, and other high-income professionals on the power of investing, especially in real estate assets and syndications. We want to help providers gain financial intelligence with the hope of earning financial freedom. Please listen and learn so you can spend more time doing what you love with who you love. Enjoy the podcast. Hello and welcome to the Assets and Orthopedics podcast. This is your host, Kyle Stevenson. We are doing something a little different with this episode today, something I think is pretty special. We usually bring on a physician who's been involved in real estate investing or entrepreneurship. And this time we're going to interview somebody a little earlier in the process, somebody that also has an entrepreneurial mindset. He has his own podcast, but we're going to interview a guy who is excited for the torture that's coming here soon, and actually just starting medical school this fall. So please welcome future doctor Curtis Wilkerson. How you doing, sir?
I'm good, Dr. Stevenson. Honored to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Just call me Kyle. Curtis, let me give a quick introduction of you, and then I want you to tell us a little bit about your journey.
Sure.
All right. So Curtis, like I said, is an incoming medical student going to Michigan State University College of Osteopathic Medicine. He did his undergrad medical studies with a bachelor and with a minor in military leadership. His bachelor degree was medical studies with a minor in military leadership from Arizona State University, where he just graduated in 2024. He is second lieutenant in Army National Guard Medical Service, and he is the host of the Physician's Mind podcast. Fantastic, man. You're a young guy and you're doing a lot of cool things. Couple things with that. I went to Michigan State for my residency, trained there for 5 years. My wife is from Michigan State, Lansing, Michigan. So that is very close to my heart. And where are you living right now?
Right now, I'm living in East Lansing, about 10 minutes from the main Michigan State campus.
Okay, fantastic, man. I proposed on Michigan State campus.
There's something about the Spartans, man. I'm telling you.
The other thing is Arizona State is awesome. You're from out there, correct?
Correct.
Yep. So my parents had a condo out there for years, so we always visited, and we laughed because we all would buy Arizona State clothes, sweatshirts. We still have it today. So of course we were all rooting for Arizona State football, a few weeks ago.
Yes, we were. I was at that game. It was a devastating loss. It was a good fight, though. Really good game.
Yep, that's a great city, great area, beautiful women, of course, and it's warmer than where you're at now.
All true.
Yep.
All very true.
So give us the story of you're starting medical school in the next few months. Give us the story of of your background growing up. Like, did you always want to be a doctor? Is there physicians in your family? What spawned you to want to go to medical school?
Yeah, I mean, if you would have told me 10 years ago that I was going to be going to medical school, I would have told you you're absolutely nuts. Born and raised in Arizona. My mom was a nurse in the emergency department. My dad, he owns a small trucking company. Parents are split since I was probably 12 years old. And I was just kind of a normal guy. I was never really interested in anything in regards to intellectual exploration or maximizing your potential or anything of that nature. I went through high school. I was a wrestler. I was more concerned with sports and hanging out than studying. Basically cheated in every class until my senior year. I realized, wow, Curtis, like, what are you going to do when you go to college and you actually need to learn important things? So I stopped cheating my senior year of high school. And at that time, I was kind of involved in some entrepreneurial endeavors. I had like a small car detailing business, kind of cash only operation. I always had that kind of interest in my life. I was always interested in entrepreneurship and business. But yeah, throughout high school and whatnot, I was into wrestling and sports and all that. Wasn't really involved in academics at all. But a lot of my friends were. In fact, most of my friends were. I went to what was considered a prep school, but it was really just kind of all honors classes. It was public program, whatever. So I always thought of myself as the dumb guy. I was always the guy that was kind of like drifting by in the classes, didn't really care, was daydreaming in class and whatnot. College began, and there was a couple big things that kind of planted the seed in my head about medicine. First and foremost, as a wrestler in high school, I had a knee injury. I tore my meniscus, ended up having, I tore it twice. I had the first time was the full repair. The second time they removed about 25% of it. And of course, when you're a young guy, your whole identity is wrapped around sports and you can no longer play sports. You're devastated. And you're like, what am I going to do? But as I've learned, some of the most challenging experiences in life can turn into some of the most meaningful, right? That being said, the knee surgeries were sort of the first seeds that were planted that led me to commit to a career in medicine. I was going into college. I got an Army ROTC scholarship. Like you mentioned, I'm an officer in the National Guard now, since commissioned when I graduated. But I was like, I'll be a nurse. I'll just major in nursing. I got my Army degree or my Army scholarship rather, to go into nursing school. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll do some sort of nursing business somehow. I'll figure it out down the road. And I'll just be an Army nurse for a few years and go there. Well, I was talking to a good family friend. His name was Scott Perrine. And he's like, Curtis, you're going to college. What are you going to do? I'm like, well, Scott, I'm going to be a nurse. And he goes, nurse? Why not go all the way and be a doctor? I'm like, And there's nothing against nurses, of course. But this is what kind of planted a seed in my head. I'm like, yeah, why not go all the way and be a doctor? Okay, interesting, right? I kind of that kind of ruminated over the next few months before I began. And finally, the last seed that was really planted was the fact that most of my closest friends, a lot of the guys that I admired growing up, were very smart people. They're interested in medical careers. One of them is in like quantum computing now. The other one's in commercial architecture. But 4 of the other guys were medicine all the way. In fact, there was a guy named Karosh. He was ripped. He was a great wrestler. This guy was really cool. He's like, yeah, I want to be a surgeon. And this was now 4 or 5 years ago. But I started thinking about this when I was going into college. And when I started school, I took anatomy. And I just loved it. Remember, I was never a smart guy. I never cared about learning. I never thought about anything like that. But I took anatomy and I was like, wow, this is awesome. And I found myself just sitting there studying, and I started getting A's, and I like really enjoyed that feeling of like winning and getting those A's and learning. And I was like, wow, okay, this is awesome. So considering, why not be a doctor? Considering, well, I had a couple knee surgeries, considering that I really liked anatomy and a lot of my buddies were doing it. I'm like, hell, why don't I give it a shot? And basically, after my first semester of college, I switched over to the medical studies degree. And they were like, Curtis, if you drop out of this nursing program, there's no going back. Like you're direct admit, you can't switch back. I'm like, okay, that's fine. And from that point on, it was the grueling journey of pre-med, getting into med school, doing Army ROTC, all this other stuff. And I never looked back. And I mean, it's just been such a great process of learning and experiencing the different aspects of medicine that, and I've basically just scratched the surface now, but here I am now. I've gotten accepted after the 4 years of pre-med and excited to start the journey, to continue the journey rather.
Good. Yeah. No, a couple things to touch on. You're a wrestler, injured your meniscus. I take care of local high school, big high school. I'm a sports medicine orthopedic surgeon, so I take care of that stuff all the time. Wrestling is the one sport I cannot stand as a physician. I'm like, yeah, we fix that stuff. We want them to go back, but then we're also nervous when they go back because you see the positions you guys get in. It's like, how does not every kid tear their meniscus or tear their labrum in the shoulder? just the, terrible position. So maybe it's a good thing you got, we're done with that.
Yeah, and amazingly, the second time I tore it, it was during COVID in the home gym. I was rocking a front squat with probably 90 pounds, and I just felt that snap, and I knew. So you never know, but you're right. Absolutely.
Yep, absolutely, man. I literally did that. I just had to re-repair a wrestler's meniscus that we fixed 6 months ago. But anyway, that's why you do it, right? Getting back to sport. No, I love the entrepreneurial mindset. I love that you like to be challenged. We'll talk about your podcast soon, but I can tell you from my standpoint, I started this podcast about 1.5 years ago, and it definitely gets you out of the comfort zone. It challenges you. It's all about networking. It's about, stepping out in front of people and saying, hey, would you want to get on this podcast, and then getting to know that person? So there's so many challenges with that we'll get into again, but what else? So yeah, let's get into that. So what prompted you to start that podcast?
So when I graduated college, I was anticipating starting medical school 3 months afterwards, right? The traditional straight out of college into med school. But like I mentioned, I'm in the National Guard. And when I was planning out the game plan there, I was told, well, you're going to have a gap year, because you have to go to your Army medical officer training. And at the time, right, and I'm going to get to why this is relevant to starting the podcast in a minute. But at the time, I'm like, what? My game plan was to start medical school in 3 months. And now you're telling me I'm going to have a year off and I have to defer and figure all this out. Well, long story short, again, what I thought was devastating in the moment ended up becoming a great opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So now I have this year. God forbid I have a year now between college ending and medical school starting.
Yep.
It's been amazing so far. It's been amazing. And July of 24, I just sort of had the idea pop into my head. I love podcasts. I love business. Why not start a podcast? Maybe turn it into some sort of a business endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did. I reached out to a bunch of friends. I had no idea what I was doing. I just hopped on Zoom and I interviewed my buddy Christian for the first episode, talked about his experiences in medical school. And now it's been 6-7 months and I'm still learning. I'm still learning about how to, navigate the challenges. I'm learning how to manage the business, so to speak. I had a 3-hour episode that was completely corrupted. So, another trial of business, But I started it because I kind of wanted to. And since I started it, I've found that it's just been an awesome tool for not only learning a bunch, whether it's about medicine, fitness, finance, right? Like in your case, fitness, finance, and medicine, what have you, just general improvement, learning about that, and then sharing that knowledge with others, and then just networking, right? Like you and I have met through the medium of a podcast. So that's why it's been so great. And that's really the story of the origin of the Physician's Mind podcast.
Yep, that's good. And one of my first guests was none other than George Ozude, MD. And I saw that he was on your podcast early on.
He was one of my first big name guests, I'll call him.
Nice. Yep. Did you meet him at a conference or how'd you get to know him?
So him and I connected on LinkedIn and I just shot him a message and he was like, absolutely.
I love it, man. Shoot your shot, right?
Yes. He's a great guy. Very smart guy.
Yep. So, and speaking of podcasts, Dr. Vikram Raya had him on a few episodes ago. And I thought a couple of things that he said, similar to what you're bringing up here. The new age of physicians is not like it was 15, 20 years ago. It used to be you made a ton of money as a physician. You can do that full time. You may see your kids somewhat. You may have a good relationship with your wife, maybe not. But now we're focused on obviously doing a good job for your patients, but elevating your health, elevating your relationships, elevating your life in all facets. And I think that's the new age physician, or so it seems to be. So I think you're seeing that, right? As a young person that's getting into this space. What would you say about that?
I think you're absolutely right. And I remember listening to that episode. He used the term doctrepreneur.
Yep.
I'm like, that is awesome. I think it's important. Yes. And to make it clear, I am a young guy. So take what I say with, take what I say as you will. But I think it is important for physicians to represent a high standard of optimization you have to sort of represent the pinnacle of performance because you are a doctor. You are supposed to be the one that knows how to handle problems and how to do things properly. So I think in this space that you mentioned, it's just an awesome way to continue learning, to sharpen your skills, and to just enjoy your life.
Yep. Here's one thing I literally just thought about, and I think it's fascinating. So patients have their phones, their ChatGPT, their Google with them at all times. They can look up studies if they want to. They can look up anything they want, right? They have this at their disposal at all times. It used to be you'd come to the physician to tell you what the physician tells you, and then that was it. Like, okay, I trust him. He tells me I need surgery, I need surgery. He tells me I need this, I need this. Now patients can look this stuff up before they even come to see you. They know all this information. To trust you as a physician, it can't just be, oh, I just told them, this, and then, they're going to trust me. It's, do you lead by example? If you are telling me about nutrition and you're overweight as a physician, you can't hide it in your white coat. Like, why would anybody listen to you if you're not living it yourself, right? So you really do have to set an example for your patients. People do trust physicians. It's just an inherent thing in society. But as physicians, we need to also gain that trust and keep that trust. And so, with healthcare, there's been a lot of corruption, and I think it's been exposed over these last 4 years with, USDA, FDA, whatever. So I think as physicians, we need to maintain that trust. We need to be the example to our patients. I think that's a big part of it.
Absolutely.
Cool. Love it. So medical school. I'll tell you about my experience. I went to LECOM down at Bradenton, Florida, a DO school, Lake Erie College of Osteopathic Medicine. And besides, now getting married and having kids, which is fantastic, those were the best 4 years of my life. Like undergrad, I had a good time, played sports, and, partied a little bit, studied a little bit. Medical school was down in Sarasota, Bradenton, Florida, and I loved it. I loved just being around the people that challenge you. They also are, elevate their game. So you're around like-minded people, and you just have a good time. It's a lot of work hard, play hard mentality. Everybody's, got a goal in mind that we're trying to hit. And so anyways, I loved it. What do you expect in these next 4 years in med school?
These next 4 years are obviously going to be tough, but we knew that signing up for it. We knew that going into it. I think it's going to be a challenge, and I think it's going to be awesome. I'm excited to meet the folks that are going to be involved in my class. I'm excited to get involved in different programs, and I'm going in with the mentality that I'm going to basically be the best that I can be. I'm going to go in with the mentality of I'm going to just put my absolute best foot forward here and enjoy the experience along the way. And really, I'm just looking forward to the challenge.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the new opportunities. I'm looking forward to the new people. And I'm looking forward, most of all, to learning the beautiful art of medicine, of course.
Absolutely. Yep. And you'll go to some Michigan State basketball games, some football games, enjoy Sparty.
Yeah, and hopefully we're a little better next year.
Yeah, I think they'll be good. They usually bounce back pretty well. So, as a physician, we talk on this podcast, we talk about real estate investing. We talk about entrepreneurship. You're thinking that way, which I love. You listen to a lot of podcasts. You read a lot of books. This kind of goes hand in hand, I think, with burnout a little bit, and we'll get into that. But what are your thoughts on, real estate investing or house hacking or just renting an apartment for medical school? Like, have you thought about those things of where you're living, where you living now? Have you thought about house hacking? Have you thought about, real estate investing at this point, or are you waiting until, you start making money to think that way?
That's a great question. And I'll start by answering with where I'm at right now. I'm in an apartment. It's probably a 550 square foot studio that I'm paying about $1,600 a month for. Okay. I start med school this July. And what I've been thinking about is potentially purchasing a small single family home or a condo to live in throughout medical school. I had the idea and I was like, well, I'm taking out this student loan. That can either go completely towards rent over the next 4 years and be virtually gone, although the white coat investor will not say that that money spent on rent was wasted. It
Right.
was spent on having a place to live for the month. Fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
But that money will go towards rent nonetheless over the next 4 years. Okay. So there's that. Or I find a house with a reasonable price, make a down payment on it, and put what's allocated from my student loan into the principal of that mortgage. Of course, after paying interest, taxes, insurance, etc. And you mentioned ChatGPT, a beautiful tool. I looked up online. Well, okay, at a 6.5% interest rate on, say, a $130,000 property with maybe a $20,000 down payment over 4 years, how much equity would I have in the home? How much would I have paid in interest with, maximizing the allocation of the
Mm-hmm.
student loan for those purposes? How much would I have in equity? How much would I have paid in interest versus how much would I have paid in rent over
Mm-hmm.
that time? And the numbers ended up coming out to like $72,000 paid in rent. And then it was something around, I want to say it was roughly 50,000 in equity, more or less 50 to 60,000 in equity with 15 to 20,000 paid in interest if I purchased a home. So I thought, okay, interesting. Maybe I'm going to purchase a house. I have about 5 months. Maybe I'll buy a house, 2, 3 bed, 1, 2 bath, what have you. And that's, as of now, what I've been committed to doing. I'm in the process of the very beginning stages of real estate investing, very beginning, literally
Mm-hmm.
like as new as you can get.
Yep.
And already I've learned a few things the hard way. First and foremost, I toured a property. Basically, I was working with the realtor that was just given to me out of the air, the one that Zillow provided.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm like, well, seems like a cool guy. Whatever, sure. I couldn't have been more foolish with this decision. Very quickly, I realized, okay, this isn't going to work. Luckily, was able to hire on a new realtor with 25 years of experience, has properties in the area that I'm looking for, knows the market in and out,
Mm-hmm.
versus the 24-year-old guy who's been in it for a year. Nothing against that. I just told him, look, I need somebody with more experience here. So that being said, I've been looking into purchasing a property with the math in mind, thinking about all the things, right? Because of course, as you know, there's so much that goes into owning a property that I
Oh, yeah.
didn't really consider until I got a home inspection on this nightmare of a house that I was about to buy.
Yep.
This is what the original realtor had hooked me up with. I'm like, wow, this looks like a great place. My ignorance
Mm-hmm.
not helping me at all in this situation.
Sure.
So I spent about, I got the full inspection done.
Mm-hmm.
There was like mold in the roof. All of the wood was soaking wet. The foundation was about to give.
Mm-hmm.
There was a crack in the septic line. There was like charred wood in the crawl space.
Yep.
So I was like,
It's a lot. Real estate is not for the faint of heart. There's no question.
No, absolutely not. So I'm like, wow. It took me back a little bit. I'm like, do I really want to own a house as a medical student? Because I don't know.
It's a tough one. Yeah, I agree. I mean, you can start thinking that way, like a duplex, somebody, you're paying the mortgage, but that person's renting and they're basically paying it down for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's ideal situation. And you could treat it like an asset in that regard. If you buy just a single family home that you own, then it's a liability, right? Because that money's just coming out. And then you're paying extra things that are unexpected, to your point. You get an older home, like a water heater goes out. I deal with the stuff in the homes I own. So yeah, I mean, you have the right mentality. You're thinking that way. There's also a focus of, I just want to go to medical school and study and not have to worry about it. I pay my rent each month and that's all I got to worry about. So that's not a bad way to go. But if you're going to look for some like duplexes, or if you're going to buy a single family home that's like a 3-bedroom, then you can get a roommate where they rent it from you, and that's essentially the same thing as house hacking.
Right, and I think that's what Dr. Raya mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, "Do it if you can."
Yeah,
so
it is a good way to go. I mean, there are headaches, of course, but you get the inspection early on, and you make sure that it is a nice house. And if you're going to talk to a realtor, Bigger Pockets is a good resource. You can get on there and find an agent that actually deals with investment properties and not somebody that's just dealing, like your standard broker, because that person actually understands it. They typically have investment properties themselves, so they get it.
Exactly.
Yep. So, yeah, I think you can go either way. Nothing against White Coat Investor. I read White Coat Investor 100 times in residency. I used to send it to all my medical students. And then once I got involved with Rich Dad Poor Dad, that became the new thing. And I think Rich Dad Poor Dad is more the mindset I like. I think White Coat Investor is good, but he's got more of the, almost to a degree, like middle class mindset, similar to like a Dave Ramsey. To a degree.
I could see that.
Yeah, maybe he's in between, but Kiyosaki thinks more like buying assets. And it's a tough one because medical school, you got loans, but I will say my big piece of advice is start investing as soon as you can, whether it's just in the market, index funds, something, but compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. Earlier you start, better you go. The more it grows, right?
Right.
Yep. I think too many people, residents and young physicians, they wait until they make a lot of money, which we're making less money nowadays than we ever were. And so they wait till they're making a lot of money. They are like, well, I got loans to pay off. I'm just going to pay my loans down. And then I'll start putting it in the market. It's like, dude, you just lost 15 years of opportunity cost where you could have been putting in the market and growing that thing.
Exactly.
So, yeah, that's a big part of it. I got to ask you, I guess, because I think this is a powerful thought. Why? So you were thinking about becoming a nurse. Why go to medical school and not just say, yeah, I'll be a nurse? I still help people. I'm still significant. People respect nurses. Less schooling. Don't have to pay all the student loans. There's a lot of pluses. My sister travels a ton. She's a nurse. So why go on to be a physician?
Because if I didn't, I would have to live knowing that there is unfulfilled potential. I'm all about going all the way, maximizing your human potential, intellectually, physically, spiritually, financially. If I didn't do what I'm doing now, I would just know that there's something more that needs to be done.
Yep.
And that's my answer.
That's good, man. That's good. All right. So you wrestled. You're in the military, second lieutenant in the Army. You're an athlete. You're a smart guy. What do you think? Orthopedic surgery?
I will say I've always had an interest in orthopedic surgery. Always have. In fact, I'm kind of going into medical school with that in mind.
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of I think I'm going to be orienting myself as if I was just 100% committed to orthopedic surgery.
Yep.
Because it's a competitive specialty and you can't go wrong if you're fully prepared to go orthopedic surgery. And then if you decide, well, maybe I want to be an emergency medicine doc or a general surgeon, you'll be squared away.
Yep.
So yeah, orthopedic surgery is up there. Although, I've worked in emergency medicine for, I was a scribe in college. I've been an EMT for the past year here. I find that I really like, the critical care side, the high intensity, the trauma sort of cases as well. So perhaps trauma surgery down the road, but it's a slow process. It's day by day.
Yep.
So.
Oh, that's good, man. Yeah. Shoot for the stars. All right. So question for you going into medical school, burnout, as we just talked about, it's at an all-time high for physicians and probably in a lot of careers, post-COVID, but I think it's like 63% of physicians are feeling some sort of burnout, which is a big deal. Income continues to go down. Control definitely continues to go down with insurance companies, hospitals, government. I think about helping patients out. Like, how cool is that we get to help patients, but patients don't help themselves out a lot of times. They don't want to get better, even though we try. We pay a lot of money in taxes. What else? There's a lot going against physicians right now. So with that being said, what do you think what do you think your generation will do better to minimize burnout?
That's a good question. My generation, you know how my generation is, but the optimistic side of me thinks that my generation knows a lot about balance. We love balance. So I think ideally, I mean, again, I haven't entered that world, right? Residency training, owning a practice, working full time as a physician. So what I
Mhm.
say comes with a degree of naivety. But I would imagine that, of course, first and foremost, like financial freedom is known to alleviate symptoms of burnout because you know you're not going to work because you have to pay bills. You're going to work because you choose to. But that's, again, so far beyond me at this point right now. Otherwise, I mean, mitigating burnout is such a challenging subject because it's so nuanced and it's so subjective for each individual. But I think
Mhm.
it involves a degree of perception of your situation. How do you interpret the challenges that you're facing, right? If you decide to label a situation as difficult and miserable, then it's going to be difficult and miserable. If you don't have proper sleep, nutrition, exercise habits, you're probably also going to be feeling a little more negative than you would otherwise. But this is all obvious stuff, I think, to the listeners of your show. But your question, how do I think my generation is going to mitigate burnout in the future? I don't know if I really have a good answer.
I think you'll be better off because there's not even you guys are so a lot of my attendings were of the generation that they made a ton of money, right? Like a neck surgery that takes ACDF. ACDF takes a spine surgeon in an hour. They were making 12 grand on it. Now it's like 2 grand. Okay. 1/6 of the cost of the reimbursement. So we see that transition. We hear the stories from all the attendees like, oh man, we used to make so much more money. We could travel. Our medical sales reps could take us on golf trips and do this, that, and the other. And so you'd hear all these stories. And maybe there's a part of it that, we've seen that loss of control of these last 5 to 10 years, with more insurance companies, more, peer to peers, which is us, having that conversation with the insurance company. Just more tightening down from hospitals. 75% of doctors now are employed. And so there's less entrepreneurship, less private practice. You guys won't really see that, right? Because you're coming out. I mean, you're going to be in residency in 4 years, 4 to 5 years. And then, another surgery rotation or surgery specialty, another 5 years after that. So that's going to be another 10 years, right? So I think the transition's already happened. All right. It's a long way to say it, but the transition's already happened. And this is the new norm for physicians. Instead of complaining about it, you guys, that's all you're going to know. So does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's like this is what we're entering into. It's not like we're not even going to know what it used to be like because this is
Exactly.
all we've known since we've been involved. Right.
That's right. That's right. Yes, sir. All right. So we're going to finish up here soon. I usually end with 4 questions, but before I get to that, what advice do you have? Say a person's listening that is their senior year of college, they're in high school, whatever. I mean, I have some patients that will listen to this maybe in, college or in high school that want to become a doctor. They want to go to medical school. What advice do you have for somebody that's younger, that will be going through this process?
First and foremost, I would have to tell them that, or I would advise them to really understand the reason why they want to do it, because that reason why you've chosen to go into medicine is what's going to support you through the challenges that are inevitable. The times where you're questioning why am I doing this to myself? You need to have a thorough, deep-seated personal reason as to why you've committed to this. And there has to be a strong emotional connection to that vision, to that why. And that's up to an individual to decide for themselves. And if
Mhm.
it's going to be for money and for status or for whatever, because I want to do what my dad did. I want to fill in my dad's glory, whatever it may be. It's up to that individual to decide whether or not that's going to sustain them through the inevitable challenges of the journey, first and foremost. Secondly, of course, it's awesome. I would advise, someone who's interested, I would tell them, yeah, it's awesome. It's challenging. You have to embrace challenge and you have to strive for excellence. So don't settle for anything other than what's excellent
Mhm.
and go all in. And the resources are there. There's no excuse not to know what you're doing these days. If you want it, if you really want to go into medicine, you'll find a way to do it. So that's generally what I would say to someone who's interested.
It's great. Fantastic, man. I love it. All right. In closing, I like to finish by asking my guests 4 final questions. What book are you reading right now?
Right now, I'm reading Die with Zero, Bill Perkins.
Bill Perkins. Let's go.
Yep. Awesome book. Probably about halfway through it. I try to read a few books at a time to avoid getting bored of one. So there's one other one. It's The Myth of Sisyphus by Albert Camus. It's like a French philosophy sort of book. Really cool. But Die with Zero is the main one right now.
It's one of my favorite books. I've read that a few times now, and it's very philosophical. I love it.
It is.
So, yeah, good for you. That's a good one. I just wrote a speech recently and likened that book to a couple different analogies. But Bill Perkins, my goal is to get him on my podcast because he is fantastic. So
you will get him on.
We will. That's right. What advice would you give? I already asked you this one. I usually say, what advice would you give to your 25-year-old self? But I mean, how young are you? 22?
I'm 22.
What advice do you give your 10-year-old self? Nah, we just talked about that.
Yeah.
We'll skip that one. What is your definition of wealth? This is a good one.
My definition of wealth. The first word that pops into my mind is freedom. But then, okay, freedom. Freedom from or freedom to? I'd say wealth is freedom from any stipulations or obligations that require you to exchange your time for something that you don't necessarily want to give up your time for. And the freedom to really pursue the endeavors that you consider to be personally meaningful and that are generative by nature. So
good.
I think that's how I would define wealth.
Cool, man. Nope, that's great for a young guy like you. Good for you. Proverbs 11:25 states, "A generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed." If you could make a big impact by giving back, what would you or have you focused on?
If I could make an impact by giving back, I think I would have focused on spreading the message that human beings have an endless amount of potential that can be fulfilled lying dormant within us. And a lot of the times we fail to realize that which we're capable of. So I think the focus I would have on my impact to others is spreading that message and trying to encourage people to be the best they can be every day.
Good, man. Fantastic. Curtis, awesome. Great episode. I appreciate you coming on. I know that you're used to being the one asking the questions, so it's kind of nice to flip the script a little bit and have you being the one, give us your take on things. You're a smart guy, and I know that you'll do big things. Call me with anything, text me. You're going to be medical school is a blast. You're going to have a great time. Enjoy it. You'll meet a lot of cool people, and we'll meet up one of these days up at Michigan State.
Absolutely.
Hey, yeah, where can people find you?
If people want to find me, you can reach me by email at wilkerson.medical@gmail.com, and you can follow at The Physician's Mind on Instagram. Great. I love it, man. Well, good. We appreciate having you on, and we'll talk very soon. Dr. Stevenson, thank you. All right. Pleasure. This is my time. Thank you for listening. If you found value in today's podcast, please leave a review so our community can continue to grow. If you would like to stay connected or receive a copy of your free investing ebook, please go to www.sharpinvestmentsllc.com, and that's sharp with a P as in professional. This is not financial or tax advice. Please consult with your financial advisor or CPA.